Welcome to the Biohacking Beauty podcast, where we explore cutting-edge strategies for anti-aging and enhanced skin health. Today, I'm thrilled to be here with Karen Martel, a certified hormone specialist and women's weight loss expert. Karen brings a wealth of knowledge on hormonal health and its impact on skin rejuvenation, especially during peri and post menopause. In our conversation, expect key insights on managing hormonal imbalances and specifically for youthful skin and the role of nutrition in health and skin health. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to share a review from one of our valued listeners. That is from Jane, which she says, awesome podcast. If you love our podcast, please consider leaving a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps us reach more people and obviously help them with their skin health journey. And now, without further ado, please welcome Karen Martel. All right, Karen, welcome to the Biohacking Beauty podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. This is great.
Yes, and we have been connected through a mutual friend, which is a superhero of a person. Now that I need them, so shout out to Natalie.
She is a superhero person, isn't she?
Yes,
I love her. Yeah.
Shout out to Natalie. So listen, you know something I've now gotten into the groove of asking is how did you? I mean, there are two types of people that engage in health for a living as a profession.
Yeah.
The majority, I feel like, are people who had some health challenges and have overcome them in a way that is, I would say, that is unique. That someone, they told them you should do A, B, and C. They did, X, Y, and Z. And it worked for them, and they're like, I gotta share it with the world. And that's like the majority of people. And there are weirdos like myself who are just like super interested and somehow are drawn to it. And that's also okay. Listen, I'm one of them. But how did you get into
it? Well, mine it definitely started with the health crisis, several of them. So and though I was already in the industry for the purpose of wanting to help others. I've always been a very empathetic person. So I got into this industry, in the health industry, when I was 20 years old, because I wanted to help people to feel better and get better. And I started with doing body work. I did a form of body work for 17 years in that practice, and then got into this, but because of my own health crisis, basically. But, so I guess I'm a little both. I'm a widow and something's happened to me. So for me, my journey started after the birth of my first child in my early 30s. Lost all my baby weight, was feeling great. She stopped breastfeeding. And shortly after that, I suddenly started getting all of these health problems, including weight gain. And it was for no reason. I just started to pack on weight. I hadn't changed my diet, hadn't changed my exercise routine. I was, 32 years old and suddenly packing on the fat. And I was just going, what is happening to my body? I got chronic insomnia where I couldn't sleep at all. I was having digestive problems. I was having really severe chronic migraines that would last on and off for 2 weeks at a time, all around my menstrual cycle, of course. I did what every woman is told to do, which is eat less and exercise more. And that was my answer to it. Even though I was in the health industry and I was always keeping up on the education of everything, I still went down that road of, okay, well, I must need to exercise. I have to eat less. I have to find the right diet to do.
Yeah.
And
calories in, calories out is
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I did whatever was popular at the time. I tried the Zone diet. I did Atkins. I started juicing. I bought a juicer because it was really popular at that time. So started like trying to do the vegetable detox juicing.
Wow.
I signed up for a CrossFit type workout. I was working out 6 days a week, probably harder
Wow.
than I'd ever worked out before in my life. And I'm surrounded by all these women that are just like, they're shredded, they look amazing. And I just got fatter and fatter
Wow.
and fatter. And I was at the heaviest I'd ever been in my life when I was eating less than I'd ever eaten. And I was working out harder than I'd ever worked out in my life. And I was
Wow.
only gaining weight. Went to the doctor. I was put on sleeping medications. I was put on an antidepressant and sent on my way,
Hmm.
which I took those things and I tried them. Of course, they didn't work. About a year into this, I decided I had to take matters into my own hands because everything I was doing wasn't working. And I knew intuitively that it was my hormones because
Uh-huh.
everything kind of seemed to be around the cycle. And so I was like, you know what? I think this is my hormones. And so I actually found a naturopath and I said, could you test my hormones for me? And he agreed. And sure enough, my hormones came back a complete mess. I had super high estrogen. I had no progesterone. I had low levels of all of my adrenal hormones, my stress hormones. So cortisol was super low. Another one called DHEA was super low. So
So
I was,
also testosterone probably was very low.
my testosterone was just kind of mediocre.
Uh-huh.
Um, my thyroid later on, I realized, not at that point, but was really low as well. So I was hypothyroid. All of this was probably triggered by the pregnancy, which is
Yeah.
a very common thing to happen to women. The children, they take everything from us when we're pregnant, all the nutrients. And so it can trigger certain issues, like if there was an underlying thyroid problem, it can exacerbate it or it
Hmm.
can trigger it to come on. And so I think the stress of pregnancy and everything that was happening was just kind of the perfect storm that just kind of set everything off. And it was like my system broke, literally broke. And it took a long time to get back to homeostasis in my hormonal system. It wasn't an easy overnight fix. I had to look at my life completely different because there I was starving myself and working out like a mad woman. I was a single mother of a
Wow.
toddler. I was running my own business and I thought I wasn't stressed. Honest to
Mhm.
God. If someone had said, oh, well, are you stressed out? I would have been like, no, I'm doing what every other woman's doing right now. What's the big deal? So I had to completely change everything. I had to I stopped doing the crazy workouts. I started doing yoga, I started, meditating and doing all the things and then supporting the hormonal system. And it was probably a good year of supporting my system and getting it things right and getting the right diet down and the right supplements before everything started to finally kind of level out and I started to drop the weight and kind of get back to normal. And then I came out of that experience going, there's got to be more women like me, more women that are doing everything right, that are super healthy people, they're eating well, they're exercising, and they still can't lose weight
Hmm.
because it's hormonal. It's a hormonal weight loss resistance. And so then I went back to school years later. I became a nutritionist. And then when I hit my early 40s, I had another hormonal storm happen. And I actually went into menopause, started to go into menopause at 42. So my ovarian function just went kaput. And once again was reminded, hey, this can happen to the best of people in the
Yeah.
sense of here I was, a freaking weight loss coach, a nutritionist, and I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to sail through menopause. Hell no. It was like I gained 20 pounds in 6 months. I was a
Wow.
complete mess. All the insomnia came back. I had itchy skin. I had my periods were missing. I was having hot flashes, night sweats, no libido. I had every symptom that person could have. I probably had it. And I'm like, really? This is going to happen again when I
Hmm.
am truly doing everything right again? But it was of course, a great teaching moment, and I wouldn't be where I am today if that hadn't happened, and I wouldn't be helping as many people as I'm helping. As I do now, because women are just simply not being told this information that this is what happens to their system. as they, or can happen even when they're doing everything right, when they
Yeah.
start losing their hormones.
For sure, for sure. I think obviously, that's not the first time I've said it or that anyone said it. Women are not good test subjects. Science research does not like women.
Nope.
So even the recommendation of calories in, calories out, whatever they tell you is basically based on a study that 99.999% is based on male,
Men.
men. By the way, maybe based also on animals, but they're also probably
Yeah.
male. Anyway, so that is like the n of one type scenario where you need to kind of figure out what works for you is obviously um, much more acute when we're talking about a female going on through some kind of health crisis. Within that, by
Mm-hmm.
the way, a lot of these what you describe as hormonal storms have you can see some changes in the skin, in skin health, right, in skin
Oh my
youthfulness.
gosh. Yes. Yeah.
What did you see there, if I
Mm-hmm.
can be even
So,
more
yeah, one thing that happened was when I went into menopause, my skin got really, really itchy. And that's actually, it's
Mhm.
quite common for that to happen.
Yeah.
And just purely skin changes. So
Yeah.
as a woman will start to drop in her hormones, our skin will start to change. Specifically, we'll get more wrinkles. It will become more dry. We can, develop cystic acne suddenly. Actually, the woman I was just talking to before this, she was like, "Why am I getting acne at 45?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Because your hormones are shifting, and as we start dropping, really mostly the estrogen,
Yeah.
as estrogen starts to drop, collagen production drops, and estrogen is a lubricator.
Yeah.
So it helps your skin to be lubricated and moist. And so without it, we can get really dry skin, and then we lose the collagen production, which means we lose elasticity in our skin.
Yeah.
And for a lot of women, when that estrogen drops, testosterone doesn't drop in a lot of women. And so
Hmm.
now we become what we call testosterone dominant. Like we always hear about estrogen dominance. Well, there's also testosterone dominance, where it's not necessarily too much testosterone. It's that there's no estrogen to counterbalance the effects of the androgens, which are
Hmm.
testosterone, on the skin. And so we can get oily skin and we can get cystic acne from that overload of testosterone in comparison to our estrogens.
And I bet cortisol doesn't help you also there, like when you're yeah.
Well, so what happens is cortisol, when we in perimenopause and menopause, we do see this sensitivity that begins to happen to cortisol levels. And
Yeah.
so it's like we suddenly can't handle stress like we used to. And this is because these other sex hormones are dropping, which do a lot more for us than just make us fertile and give us a period. They're buffers. They're
Yeah.
buffers to stress, right? Progesterone in and of itself, super calming. It acts on what's called the GABA receptors of your brain. And
Hmm.
so, we've all heard of GABA. It's an anti-anxiety supplement, helps us to sleep at night. So when we don't ovulate, we don't produce progesterone. And so as progesterone drops, anxiety can go up. We're not sleeping as well. And what does that cause? It causes cortisol to go up, which then causes blood sugar problems as well as inflammation. And we
Yeah.
know that inflammation of the skin is, of course, the worst thing for your skin. So we don't
Yeah.
want that. And then also the insulin starts to become really, really affected by the drop of progesterone and estrogen and testosterone. So insulin resistance typically starts to go up. So that means you're not going to be processing your blood glucose as well. Once again, causing cortisol problems and causing inflammation.
Yeah, for sure. So within that time period, like the second time period, you're saying, well, if it happens to the best of us, do you then say, hey, I wanna look at like bioidentical hormone replacement? Like, what's the response from someone who is educated and is in the know, as we say?
Yeah. So bioidentical hormones really have their place. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation about bioidentical hormones. And so when we're still in our fertile years, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, there's a lot that we can do as far as our hormones go to balance them back out again, to improve their levels. There's amazing herbals. There's, just taking things like a good mineral supplement. Like there's so many great things that you can do just watching your stress levels to balance these hormones out at that time. But
Yeah.
as we hit our usually between 35 and 40, we stop ovulating as often, which means that progesterone starts to drop. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get into your early 40s and it really starts dropping. And this is because we only come into this world with a certain amount of eggs. And
Yeah.
so once we don't have those eggs, we're not going to ovulate anymore. And so that progesterone isn't going to be produced anymore from ovulation. And then as you get into your mid 40s, now testosterone begins dropping. Testosterone can actually drop at any time, but we
Yeah.
typically see it going in mid 40s. Same with estrogen, specifically one called estradiol. These hormones are made primarily in your ovaries. And so as your ovaries stop working, which will happen to every single woman, 100% of women will lose ovarian function and will lose the majority of those hormones.
Yeah.
Now, testosterone, we make about 40% in our ovaries. We do make quite a bit in other means through the adrenal system. Progesterone, we can make a little bit as well, and estrogen, a little bit out of adrenals. And then estrogen, we can make certain types of estrogen from fat tissue. So we get these little tiny amounts from these other areas. However, the primary source of those three hormones are coming from your ovaries. And so once those ovaries are done, there's no amount of supplementation. There's no amount of healthy dieting. There's no amount of exercise that is going to bring those hormones back. You will never get them back. And so that's when hormone replacement therapy is a really, really great option. And we know from the research that majority of women can safely replace their hormones. And we know that majority of women will benefit health-wise from replacing their hormones substantially, actually, in some women. Like the research is absolutely incredible. We know from a research study that was just done a couple years back in 2020 out of the University of Arizona, that women that replaced their estradiol in menopause for 6 years or longer had a 75 to 80% reduction in developing Alzheimer's and dementia.
Wow.
Huge.
But,
Huge.
could you talk a little? Once in a while, it's becoming thankfully a bit more rare. But once in a while, you'll hear someone saying, "Well, my doctor told me that there is a higher risk for cancer, or it can cause." So, can you talk a little bit about the misconceptions there and some skewed data and research that kind of leads us to hear things like that?
Yeah. So prior to the early late 1990s, majority of women were actually on hormone replacement therapy, and they were on Premarin, which came from pregnant horse's urine. It was the number one most prescribed medication in North America.
Wow.
So you can imagine the majority of women were on hormone replacement therapy. They also had women take a fake progesterone because they realized that Premarin could, of course, make the uterine lining overgrow. And they needed progesterone to protect the uterine lining from overgrowing. So they put women on a progestin, which is the same as what we get in birth control pills. We're like, great, use this. It'll protect the uterus. These women won't get uterine cancer. Awesome. So then they decided to do this great big study, one of the largest studies of its kind, which was the Women's Health Initiative, which, if you haven't heard of it, this is why you think estrogen gives you breast cancer, whether you know it or not. That's why you think that. This study, they had different arms of the study, right? One arm of the study, women didn't have a uterus and they were put on Premarin only, the horse's estrogen. The other arm of the study had women on both the progestin and the Premarin. Years into the study, they saw an increase in breast cancer and uterine cancer. So they stopped the study. They put out to the world, oh my gosh, hormone replacement therapy gives women breast cancer and uterine cancer and increases their risk of heart attack and stroke. Get them off this now. And every woman pretty much jumped off her hormones. And every doctor in North America and around the world started to say no to hormone replacement therapy and telling their patients, still to this day, that it's going to give them breast cancer. Now, there's been several different researchers who have reanalyzed that study. And it has been put out there, but we obviously don't hear about it enough, that the studies of that were completely misinterpreted.
Yeah, it's like one person more or something like that got cancer, right?
First of all, yes, there was a very small percentage, like one in every 1,000 women had an increased risk. But it was the arm of the study that women were on the Premarin with the progestin that had the increased risk. The women in the Premarin arm of the study only, so they only had the estrogen, had a decrease in developing breast cancer. A decrease. Do you think we heard about that? So
it's not interesting enough.
It's not interesting enough. It's not going to kill them. So it's like
no one interested in false alarms.
Yeah, exactly. And it's ruined women's lives. Truly, truly has ruined women's lives. There's some women that get so ill when they lose their hormones, they can become suicidal. There's women that have committed suicide because of their hormones dropping. There's women that have left their very high paying, fantastic jobs that they worked at their entire life. They had to leave because they were told that estrogen is going to give them cancer. So God forbid they get any. And because of that, their brain starts going. They have such foggy brain because estrogen is so important for brain function. Or they're hot flashing all day, or they're severely depressed. We need estradiol to make serotonin, which is an antidepressant neurotransmitter. We need progesterone to be our anti-anxiety, to help us to sleep. It also helps with brain function. All of these things help with skin, right? Both progesterone and estrogen are very important for skin. So women will start to age rapidly when their hormones start dropping. And so this is all thanks to this stupid Women's Health Initiative study. It is. It's so stupid. It makes me so mad because I can't tell you, every single week, I've been in this business for over 10 years. Every single week, I have somebody saying to me, well, isn't estrogen going to give me cancer? Or have some fear about it. And they'll come to me and say, oh, my doctor said, no, I can't be on estrogen. It's going to give me cancer. The research shows women that replace their hormones, including estrogen, have a 33% reduction in all-cause mortality, a 30% reduction in all cancers.
Wow.
Including breast cancer.
Wow. And where are we today as far as the bioidentical hormones?
Right.
What's changed in the last 20 years? Not necessarily only application methods, etc., but also the actual, where are we deriving them now, or how does it look like? How does the ecosystem look like?
Yeah, so we still have Premarin around, and there's still doctors that will actually prescribe it. Obviously, it's not the best, though. When you take estrogen orally, it does increase your risk of heart attack and stroke, and that is a fact. Yeah. So we shouldn't be using it ever because we now have bioidentical hormones, which means exactly the same as what your body makes, we can now get our hands on. Yeah. And that's typically coming from it's chemically derived, but it's coming from either soy or yams for
Yeah.
progesterone and for the estrogen. And what's interesting is nobody took women off birth control pills. And they're giving out like candy to 14-year-old girls, 13-year-old girls, and told you can stay on these forever. No big
Yeah.
deal. Go for it. When it was the progestin, the increased risk of breast cancer. So birth control pills increase risk of breast cancer, but we don't see women going, oh, don't give me birth control pills.
Yeah.
So like really keep that in mind when, before next time you're going to put your young little daughter on a birth control pill for acne, think twice about it. It can really, really disrupt her system and increase her risk of breast cancer. So,
Well, that's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, yes,
tip of the
definitely. I mean,
iceberg. Yeah.
I don't want to say, if that's the reason you're not going to give your children any kind of like any kind of pill, that's fine with me. But there is something to be said about having a normal menstrual cycle, cycle syncing kind of your life around the stages of your cycle where you're in your menstrual phase. I mean, there
Yep.
is so much wisdom that we're just now discovering and kind of learning how to live with a cycle, that it is, I believe, a type of to be honest with you, I think it's criminal to give someone who is underage any type of like hormonally manipulating pill.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm one for, I want women to have that choice, and they do have the choice,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, yeah.
fantastic. And if you want to go on birth control pills, great. But yes, think twice about it when it comes to your children, because you are setting them up for sometimes disastrous
Yes.
outcomes when it comes to fertility, and what you are essentially shutting down their hormonal system. And birth control pills are endocrine disruptors.
Yes.
They are not hormones. They're chemicals that disrupt
Mm-hmm.
your innate hormonal system.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind, because doctors don't tell women that. It's just like, yeah, go for it. It's safe. And it's unfortunately not. It does ruin the microbiome as well.
Oh yeah, ruin your microbiome again. A lot of the times we're hearing now. Oh, how come they don't teach you to do your taxes in school, right? How come they don't teach you to, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't go to school in America. I barely went to school anywhere. So I'm not one to say anything. But how come they don't teach you about the fact that you have a completely different hormonal makeup every stage of your cycle, and there are things
Yeah.
that you will thrive doing or engaging in or thinking about on one, in your luteal phase, and completely other things in your whatever it doesn't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
going from the, I would say, from the negative to maybe something a little bit more positive. So right now we have bioidentical hormones, ones that your body really likes kind of engaging with. But going through that process of thinking of natural cadence of the body, there are different modalities that different doctors like. For example, pellets that are injected kind of subcutaneously and are kind of injected every so often, every few weeks. And there are creams. There are a few different things. So,
Yep.
what is your opinion of maybe? Obviously, convenience is number one, but what's your opinion about your favorite method? How do you see this industry from your point of view?
Yeah. So unfortunately, there is a lot of clinics
Mm-hmm.
that are really into making money from their hormone replacement therapy, which is great. Everybody should try and make money. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, a lot of them aren't actually trained in hormones in the female
Mm-hmm.
hormonal system. And so they've been trained like how to insert pellets, for instance. And then it's just every single person that walks through the door gets the exact same thing. It's like, here's your pellets. We're going to
Yeah.
put these in your butt for 3 months. We're not going to give you estrogen. We're not going to give you progesterone. We're just going to give you this boatload of testosterone. See ya.
Mm-hmm.
And it unfortunately doesn't work for some women. It does for some, but for many it doesn't. So pellets, number one, not my first choice,
Yeah.
because once you get them in, you cannot get them out.
Yeah.
And so as a first line therapy for hormonal loss, you don't want to do pellets until you know how your body handles that hormone. Testosterone typically. There are pellets that have a little estrogen in them too, but I rarely hear about pellet clinics using estrogen.
Yeah.
Most of them don't. Most of them just use testosterone and progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
And estrogens are most important. We're not trying to androgenize women, and a lot of these clinics are. So I see women with, their testosterone in the hundreds, like hundreds and hundreds, and even their free testosterone levels way above the range. Yeah. And they're getting, let's talk about skin problems. They are getting horrible skin problems. If I had gone in for pellets, for instance, I would have spent 3 months with a complete pizza face. Like yeah. I don't metabolize testosterone very well at all. I am missing these 2 enzymes, the UGT enzymes. So genetically, I'm missing 2 copies, which means I don't get rid of my testosterone very well. So it builds up in my system.
Yeah.
And so if I was to do something like that, I would have broken out in cystic acne all over my entire face and chest and back.
Yeah.
And I would have had to live like that with oily skin, oily hair loss is another one. And I would have had to just sit there with that for 3 months and wait for it to wear out of my system. Wow. I've had women that have told me they gained like 20 pounds from water retention and from that testosterone because they don't get rid of it very well. So you don't know how you metabolize something until you go, well, unless you have genetic testing done with somebody that knows how to interpret it.
Yeah.
You don't know. So to jump right into something like that is not good. It's not a good idea. It's also, they tell you that it just is slowly released over 3 months. And I will tell you, I have rarely seen that happen. Almost across the board, I see them with extremely high levels for that first month, and then they peter out. And you'll hear it from people that have done it where they're like, oh my God, I felt amazing for my first month or 2. And then I crashed and I felt so horrible. And I had to wait to get my next pellet insertion.
But again, and that's something I kind of alluded to. I didn't want to, I don't want to say my opinion, but again,
say your opinion.
This is not according to the way your body produces, synthesizes hormones, circulates hormones, reacts to different things. Again, talking about the difference between men and women, and not most of these clinics, but a lot of the clinics are, male driven or, especially like hormone replacement clinics. Let's ask ourselves, who was interested in hormones like 20 years ago before it became, an interesting choice as far as helping people. It's mainly, men for the most part. So you're looking at a male brain thinking of, oh, there is lack of a, X hormone, let's give them that X. So a pellet, for example, something that you mentioned, that reverse hockey stick type of release, that is not how your body produces any hormone, which is in pulses. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's really, it is very hard to mimic what we do. Yeah. There are certain ways that are out there that try their best to mimic the normal fluctuations of a woman's hormone levels in her 20s. There's the Wiley protocol and physiologic restoration. Now they're taking different amounts every couple of days. They're changing their dose to try to mimic very similar to what we produce when we're fertile. This works really well for some women like that, and they need that. Like they've tried static dosing, they've tried pellets, and that is what works best for them, to fluctuate and to cycle their hormones and to take them in high amounts. That is where they feel their best. So fantastic. That's what you do. There's some women that take pellets and they think they're a godsend because they're super easy. They get them in 3 months later, they go back, put another set in, and they seem to do great. But a lot don't do great on pellets. And then there's static dosing where you take estrogen and progesterone every single day. And then there's the controversy of estrogen versus like estradiol versus something called bias, which a
Hmm.
lot of hormone practitioners use bias, which is typically mostly estriol,
Hmm.
which is our weakest form of the three estrogens. There's estrone, estradiol, and estriol. Estriol is made from estrone and estradiol. It converts down to it. And then when we're pregnant, the placenta will make a lot of it. And that's when we have the most estriol, is when we're pregnant. And it's
Hmm.
very concentrated. The receptors are super concentrated in the vagina tissue. So it's really great for vagina lubrication. It's also what's been in studies been used as a face cream is
Hmm.
estriol.
Correct. And under eye cream, yes.
And under eye cream, super amazing. It's great for
Yeah.
the skin, helps to lubricate the skin, helps to build collagen production. And it's actually like they tested it. They actually saw an increase when they used estradiol and estriol on the face, an increase in collagen production in 3 months, as well as a decrease in pore size.
Yeah.
So fantastic in and out for skin, really great, and for the vagina tissue.
Yeah.
But estriol is a pregnancy hormone. And it actually, there is suspicion, there hasn't been a lot of research done on it, that estriol is actually what suppresses the innate immune system so we don't reject the fetus. And it's one of the
Hmm.
reasons why women with autoimmune conditions will typically actually go into remission and feel better during pregnancy
Uh-huh.
because of this high amount of estriol. Now, estriol only acts on what's called the beta receptors in the body. So it's not proliferative, it doesn't make things grow.
Yeah.
And estradiol does not cause breast cancer, but if you have breast cancer cells, well, it's going to sit on the alpha receptor and the beta receptor. And the alpha receptor is proliferative, which means can make it grow. So if you have breast cancer cells and it's estrogen driven breast cancer, then you can make it grow. So it doesn't cause it, but it can make it multiply.
And that's why you're saying you might want to, you should be testing for breast cancer before you're starting your hormonal replacement.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to do. Yeah, I'm not really like big on the mammograms. That whole thing's changing too,
Yes.
thankfully, because we're being told way too much to get mammograms, and then we're giving ourselves breast cancer because of that.
Hmm.
So that's a whole nother podcast episode.
Yeah.
But yes, we want to make sure that obviously don't have any estrogen driven breast cancer.
Yeah.
But the research is showing, there's a lot of news research coming out showing that women that replace their estrogen have less breast cancer, as
Yeah.
well as less reoccurrence. So if you actually take estrogen replacement before you get breast cancer, not that you would know you were getting it, but before you had it, you actually have less chance of it reoccurring once you've gotten rid of it.
That's very interesting. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that is definitely the case. But thankfully, right now, the entire field of diagnosing or testing for cancer is completely changing, and within a few years, we're going to have a completely different landscape for that, which is very exciting. Which is driven by MRIs mostly. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. But with the hormones, like I think my point there was
Yeah.
there's many ways that you can take hormones, and you really want to find a practitioner who's open-minded and willing to work with you as an individual. So
Hmm.
pellet people, they have to pay to do pellets. They got to pay a monthly fee. It's like a franchise. So they're only going to ever give you pellets and only ever going to offer you pellets in most cases because they need to make their money.
Yeah.
Rather, each one of us, and I've worked with thousands of women in hormone replacement therapy, I definitely see how some things work better than others for the masses. Things like injectable testosterone seems to do best for women.
Yeah.
A weekly injection. It definitely, women seem to notice their testosterone better in their system, and we can get the levels to where we want them to be, and they feel good. Cream would be second to that. Never troche, never swallowing.
Hmm.
Testosterone, estrogen. Unless you have a history of breast cancer, I typically don't see that all that estriol is a good idea. I don't want to try and mimic pregnancy in menopausal women. I
Yeah.
can see, I've seen it make them gain weight. It can actually make you more prone to blood sugar problems. So I would rather use what we use our entire fertile life, which is estradiol. And we know
Yeah.
that it takes a certain amount of estradiol in the body in menopause to protect us from developing osteoporosis, Alzheimer's and dementia, and heart disease, which heart disease is the number one killer of women. And we know that replacing your estradiol, not estriol, protects your heart. So
Yeah.
there are certain things that you see working better. And there's some, I'll have some women increase their estradiol once a month just because we naturally do in our cycle. And that actually upregulates a tumor suppressing gene.
Yeah.
And so, once a month, triple up your estradiol just to activate that.
Yeah.
Great. So there's
So
different things.
there are, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of the questions that I wanted to ask you, but I think it's interesting topic that shout out again to Natalie Needham. But what is the place that you see peptides taking within that relationship? Obviously, I wanted to ask you around peptides when we talk about managing weight, etc. But um, in the realm of helping people have a good balance of a hormonal balance and a, life quality of life. Do you see peptides, playing a part there?
I do more and more so. Like they're
Yeah.
becoming more and more popular. We have a lot of women that use them in our practice.
Hmm.
The growth hormone peptides can be great
Yeah.
because we know that growth hormone definitely depletes as we get older. So doing things like the growth hormone can be great for sexual function, skin health, brain health, bone health. So it
Sleep.
can really help sleep. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Oxytocin, we see a lot of oxytocin being used in the peptide world
Yeah.
because that can definitely go down as we age as well, which is the love hormone.
Hmm.
We see bioregulator peptides working well for some people. I've seen women slow down their transition to menopause by using the ovarian bioregulators.
Hmm.
I've seen people preserve thyroid function by using the thyroid bioregulators. As we age, our immune system becomes compromised because of the loss of these hormones. So, doing ones that support your immune system and
Yeah.
inflammation can be very helpful. And then, of course, the weight loss peptides have been a complete game changer for menopausal women because we can do all of the right things. Once again, we can be replacing the hormones and doing it right, and we can feel amazing, but yet we can't get off that menopausal weight gain. It is some of the most stubborn weight to get rid of. And I have seen some women that really, truly, they are doing everything right and they cannot lose that weight. And
Wow.
so, and this is because so many doctors wait till a woman is in menopause before they start replacing their hormones, which that really has to change because if we can catch it early, we don't see that kind of weight gain that
Yeah.
happens. Yeah,
Well,
and all of the other health problems.
it's funny that you're saying the weight loss peptides because a little unknown fact is a lot of the peptides, like the classic peptides that we normally engage with, actually started as weight loss peptides. They just didn't do that good of a job there. They did a good job in other places, increasing your mitochondrial function or whatever that is, but they
Yeah,
didn't make you lose weight that well. So
yeah,
uh, when you say weight loss peptides, do you mean specifically GLP-1 agonists,
yeah,
such as obviously,
I do. Yeah,
I don't know
there's
what
other
what
ones,
names are
but
in Canada, but
but
I'm assuming it's the same, like
yeah,
semaglutides,
same
etc.
thing. Yeah, we don't have tirzepatide here
Hmm.
or reguatride or whatever the other one is
Hmm.
that's just coming out. But the semaglutides here, but they've been the best. There's other weight loss peptides that we just haven't seen the same
Hmm.
results with.
Yeah.
Tirzepatide and semaglutide are complete game changers for women, like
Yeah.
for everybody, but for women that have that really severe weight loss resistance, it's like a miracle. They're just like, wow.
And as you're putting on the hat of a let's say, a guide of a kind of a healthy lifestyle, someone you're supporting that are taking those GLP-1 agonists, again, like semaglutide, tirzepatide, whatever that is. Monjaro here now in America, it's pretty popular. So how do you prevent some of the additional again, unwanted symptoms, such as, for example, loss of fat tissue in the face, muscle loss? Now we have not only semaglutide, what do they call it, like semaglutide face or something like that?
Oh, yeah, the Ozempic
Ozempic
face.
face, Ozempic face, and now we have
Yes.
also Ozempic butt, right? I heard about it as well. So how
Yeah.
do you coach people around that?
So we actually started a program using the weight loss peptides for menopausal and perimenopausal women.
Hmm.
And we did this not because like we're not selling them ourselves. We give them access to a place where they can buy them.
Hmm.
Um, but we wanted to have women do it right because a lot of people were doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And you really, you have to make sure your hormones are in check. You have to be
Hmm.
replacing your hormones if you want to have success with the GLPs.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that's happening. And then we want to make sure that you're eating enough protein so you don't lose that muscle tissue. So we
Hmm.
typically have our women prioritize protein in their diet, and we really try and drive that home. Like we sound like broken records, me and
Do you
my
put a
other
number
coach.
next to it? Do you tell
Well,
them?
we try to, yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows at this point that you're supposed to be aiming for a gram of protein per pound of
Yeah,
ideal body weight.
yeah,
That's pretty hard to get when you're on the GLPs because you're just not that hungry.
yeah,
So we have them take things like the branched chain amino acid supplements so that they can preserve their muscle tissue. We really encourage nutrient dense foods and making sure that that protein is number one on their plate. And
yeah.
because of that, we've actually had several women do DEXA scans before and after. And so I can't tell you how many put muscle on while being on
Wow.
tirzepatide and have gone against what everybody's saying out there. Now, there's, of course, a bunch of women that are also on the other end of that spectrum who didn't listen to our advice and they lost muscle tissue.
Hmm.
And so now they're having to kind of recoup that. And now that they've, stabilized their weight, now they're having to work on putting that muscle back on again.
Yeah.
And so it can, the sensitization that you get for the blood glucose, you can really actually go in your favor to put muscle on easier.
Hmm.
So you can take advantage of being on these GLPs
Yeah.
in growing your muscle. So
Well,
you just have to make sure you're getting that protein in.
well, it makes some sense because when we look at a classic strategy for bodybuilders or people who want to pack mass on, we want to actually or the strategies express themselves in generally a lower metabolism. So I mean that makes sense because obviously GLP-1 agonists do that as well. I mean that's what they do. So I mean there is a correlation there. So it's very interesting that you bring that up. I actually didn't know that you can that
Yeah.
is something that you can do.
Yeah. And then as far as like any weight loss will create Ozempic face and butt.
Yeah.
So it's not fair to point the finger at GLPs as like, oh, these cause your face to look gaunt and you to have no bum. Any
Hmm.
amount of large weight loss is going to do that.
Yeah.
And so, you have to obviously know where to draw the line. You have to be doing lots of skincare, to make sure that you're trying to keep the elasticity going. There's lots of things that you can do. Even just making sure you're eating enough protein is going to really help with that skin
Yeah.
elasticity.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I
And
think
then
also
work out. Don't stop
yes.
working out. Jeez Louise,
Yes.
like lift weights, lift heavy weights through this whole, you should always be doing it anyways, but we really push it in our group because we want women to maintain their muscle tissue and still have a butt by the time they've lost all the weight.
For sure. And actually what I say to people sometimes, obviously everyone, reaches a certain age where they lose fat tissue in subcutaneous fat in their face, which leads to A few things actually, but for the most part, we're talking about gaunt, less supportive tissue behind our skin, so this the skin is looser. I actually tell them to do something again that is very bro-y, if you would, which is the jazzerciser. It's this little well, now we can get many different companies who do that, but you basically chew on this piece of rubber that is quite resistant, and you build muscle tissue in your metatarsal. So
Right.
yeah, so that can kind of balance out a little bit the lack of volume, and it really works. Another thing it does, it also improves the architecture in your breathing. In
Oh,
your
I see. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
in your palate, there's benefits to that anyway.
Yeah. And you can also have to just kind of know where to draw the line.
Yeah,
The thing with these GLPs is your body
yeah,
just keeps losing weight on them. Like
hmm
there is no like, oh, okay, this is good for you and your height and body structure. And okay, now we're going to stop losing weight. It just goes, you just sail right past your set point. You sail
yeah,
right past where you normally would be. And so you can get skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. And we have to remember that loss of fat in your face is going to cause that very gaunt, loose skin
yeah.
the older you are. So
And
leaving a little fat on your body is
yeah,
actually preferred.
and I've seen good results. I mean, again, facilities here, mainly the ones who are, I would say, are just more inclined for peptide recommendation and prescription in general, rather than someone who is, again, after the money and just wants to make money off of selling those GLP-1 agonists. I see that a lot of them pairing it with growth hormone
Yes.
peptides,
Yep.
and I see
We recommend
incredible
that.
results. Yeah. So what do you recommend? CJC 1295 and hypomorelin.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. We tell that to a lot of women that are in the group that that's one of the best ones to take with the
Yeah.
GLPs to preserve the muscle tissue,
hmm
and really watching their testosterone levels.
hmm
Because testosterone is going to help you to maintain muscle tissue. Estrogen does as well to a certain degree. So you want to just make sure, once again, like your hormones are where they need to be, that you're lifting heavy, and that you're watching that you don't lose too much, and that you keep a little bit of fat around so that you can have a little bit of a plump face.
Yeah. What are you telling people? How do you see the interaction between, again, that little cohort and fasting and like low carb diets, or even carnivore, but like all of these these two modalities? How do they interact between them? Do you tell people don't fast as much, or this would actually increase your results? What's your take on it?
Well, what we've done is, because we do have a meal plan in the
Yeah.
program, and so we do incorporate bulletproof coffee fasting,
hmm
because so that you get that fat in there, a little bit of fat in there, and then it's easier on the cortisol and easier on the adrenal system. And we see that that works well. We don't overdo it though. I am not a big proponent of chronic fasting. Like, so if
Yeah.
somebody's fasting every single day and they're doing 36 hours once a week, and which a lot of women are right now,
hmm
we really see that being a detriment to sustainable weight loss. Basically, like, we see
Yes.
that it actually starts to reverse itself and women start gaining weight, and it also really lowers the thyroid. And so if
Yeah.
women are going too low carb, too low fat, then you start to really run into problems. So using the GLP-1s as a way to make fasting easier is great. And so do some intermittent fasting. Awesome. Do that a couple days a week. But
Yeah.
the rest of the time, you really want to make sure you're getting in some food. The GLP-1s don't just work on appetite suppression. That's not why you're losing weight. That's a small
Yeah.
piece of why you're losing the weight, but there's a lot more to it. So people think that oh, okay, so I'm not eating. I don't feel like eating. Great. I'm not going to, and I'm just going to fast every single day. And you're going to run into problems. You're
Yeah.
going to become nutrient deficient. You're going to start losing your hormones because of it. You're going to stop cycling. Like, all of these things can happen even on the GLP-1s, from not eating as much. So you have to make sure that you are getting in enough calories. And so you don't want to go too low carb and fast too much. I'm really against that, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I think what we, going back to the harsh negative. I mean, what we do see some promises with combining these more extreme like solutions plus GLP-1s for starving out like certain cancers and stuff like that. But this is so far on the end of the spectrum that we really, there's nothing there to take with us as far as like a healthy lifestyle. So
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not meant, like the female body, we
yeah.
have to always remember that we're built for fertility and that's it. Like that's why
Mhm.
we're here. That's why how you're everything that governs that inside your system.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting the nutrients, you're not eating enough food, then over a certain amount of time, like, yeah, you'll get a bunch of benefits in the beginning, but over long term, you're going to start getting really negative outcomes from
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
because you're telling your body there's no food around.
Yeah.
You're in winter. So lower the metabolism, preserve your energy, don't freaking get pregnant. So let's lower the hormones because you couldn't sustain a pregnancy.
Yeah.
So hormone levels drop, thyroid drops, and you start feeling like garbage. And
Yeah.
I've seen this, I can't tell you how many times, thousands and thousands of women at this point have come to me saying how much that chronic fasting, low carb world destroyed them.
Yeah, and you did mention, yeah, for sure. And you did mention thyroid health. This is something that I was very excited to speak with you about because this is, again, something that is now extremely prevalent as far as like, people turning to us because they have some impaired, skin function, and obviously they lose some of that youthfulness because of, hypothyroidism.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, obviously, again, connecting to what you said before, the skin is literally it has many different, I would say, like jobs, but the job that we sometimes care about the most is its job as a communication
Yes.
agent,
Yep.
communicating that you're vital and you're ready to reproduce and you're going to create healthy babies, etc. And that is why you have this beautiful skin with many subcategories. But so that's why they care about this. But again, the thyroid is a full, I mean, is an incredible organ. So how do you what do you see in your practice as far as the thyroid being kind of the driver of aging, being a driver of disease?
Yeah, I mean, all the hormones work together
Yeah.
synergistically. So what we typically see is women as they enter perimenopause and
Mhm.
menopause, their thyroid also goes down.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes overlooked. And so we see mostly a conversion problem. So not that women are developing Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune hypothyroidism, which is the most popular cause of hypothyroidism in our fertile years. But as we age, we start to have a conversion problem from T4 to the usable form of thyroid, T3, which
Mhm.
slows the metabolic rate down. There's
Mhm.
many reasons for this. A, we become insulin resistant because of the loss of estrogen and other hormones, the loss of progesterone. Progesterone is needed for thyroid function. Even testosterone can impact thyroid function. As I said, they all work together.
Yeah.
And so we have to watch the thyroid. What I do see happening a lot is women coming in before hormones and they have a poor T3 level. So it's low. They have symptoms of hypothyroidism. Like, they can't lose weight. They don't feel well. They're super tired. We bump up those sex hormones with hormone replacement therapy. And 3 months later, 6 months later, you see that T3 come up naturally.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes a lot of the time it does. And so why you typically will kind of go, you know what, let's get these other hormones online first. And then we look at the thyroid because the thyroid will so oftentimes come up because of that. And if it doesn't, then it's like your other hormones where it's like, okay, then let's look at replacing what it is that your body is missing, because it's just due to aging,
Yeah.
and what happens with aging. And T3 is so important. I mean,
Hmm.
we have receptors for T3 everywhere in our system. It
Yeah.
has so much to do with skin, stomach, immune system, blood sugar regulation, etc.
Yeah, it's interesting because if we go over the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause and what it does to the skin, you mentioned itching and dry skin, or extra activity of the sebaceous gland. So all of those things, again, there is a convergence there as well. It could be because of the thyroid, it could be because of other hormones. So it's. I bet it's very
Yeah,
confusing.
it's very confusing, and it's just like the perfect storm, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Like when this starts to happen and all of these hormones start dropping, every system in your body is going to be affected by it.
Hmm.
And a lot of times there's some women that don't have symptoms of menopause. They don't have the symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain, low libido. They're like, you know what? I don't really like, I'm just missing my period. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
but what's going on the inside? And then also, how fast are you aging on the outside?
Yeah.
What's happening to your skin elasticity? Because taking hormones internally is just as crucial for skin as it is taking it outside of the skin as
Oh yeah.
well.
Oh yeah. So and what I really like about our conversation is I believe there is just we've gotten the light at the end of the tunnel really white and bright, and understanding that first of all there is understanding, and also there is someone such as yourself that really has gone through it, knows what's going on, and can really 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 help kind of get the life back on track. The question is, how do we, for those who are listening and are not experiencing that, they are still kind of before. I know we touched on lifestyle, but how do you? What would you tell your little sister, your little niece, or whatever? How should they live their life in order to minimize the effects of perimenopause, or how do
Yeah.
you? Yeah, what are some of the lifestyle
Yeah.
choices that you would
Yeah.
take?
Yeah. Because as important as the hormones are to replace,
Yeah.
you still have to have those foundational pieces. It's not a
Hmm.
quick fix. It's not a band-aid. You can't, you still have to, this time more than ever, watch what you're eating. You got to watch, you got to make sure you're extra, you got to do all the things still, like, obviously. And I
Yeah.
always try and get that across to women, because I'm in one breath, I'm saying, you can't diet, you can't fast, you can't exercise your way to hormonal loss.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you have to still have all of those things in place,
Yeah.
because your health is very rocky at this time,
Hmm.
and we start to deteriorate. So we want to make sure that we're eating well and doing all the things. I find skin wise and health wise, diet wise, body metabolism, I definitely lean towards a paleo based diet.
Yeah.
So not super low carb. Some people need to go lower carb that have, blood sugar issues, for sure. Even some people go carnivore for a period of time to, just basically
Yeah.
get rid of that insulin resistance. Like, those things all have their place. They can be used therapeutically, and I'm not against them.
Hmm.
But what I have seen work the best for the masses is a paleo based diet where you're cycling the carbs, where you're cycling the calories. So you're not in this chronic low calorie state or an excess calorie state, that you're getting metabolic flexibility. And it's the most anti inflammatory. And I feel like it's the best for the skin. I
Yeah.
really do, because you still get the healthy fats in there. You're doing low inflammatory foods, which we know inflammation is the biggest driver of skin issues.
Yeah.
So keeping that low, I think that's why, honestly, besides me replacing my hormones, my paleo diet is what has kept me looking like I do. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm almost 48, and I see myself compared to other women that are 48 that haven't eaten a healthy diet and maybe eaten too much sugar and unhealthy foods. They don't look like I
No.
look. And
No.
this is not me pumping my tires. I'm just making the point across that what you're putting inside your body is massive when it
Yeah.
comes to the skin health.
Hmm.
Huge. So I think heavy lifting, we really start to lose muscle tissue as we age because of the hormonal loss. So we want to make sure that we put muscle on and keep it on. Doing chronic cardio, big no-no, especially as you age. Your cortisol, like I said, is super sensitive. We don't want to be raising it up all the time, and which also raises glucose all the time. That's just stress, inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
So lifting heavy, because that'll help you to process your blood sugars better, help lower insulin, all of those good things. Obviously, stress reduction. Women are nutso these days. We're trying to
Yeah.
do way too much. We base our worth on how much we get done in a day, and that's got to stop, especially at menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous that this, I always say, these can be the best years of your life, because this is the first time when typically your kids are older. You're either keeping the partner or you're gotten rid of them at this point. Same with your job. And this is the first time in your life where you can actually go, okay, what do I
Yeah.
want? And you can actually look at yourself and pay attention to yourself. And I believe this is one of the reasons we go through this.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be challenging because it's forcing you to pay attention to you finally and go, okay, what do I want in my life? And that doesn't mean just like diet or anything like that. Like, what do you truly want? Who are you? And what do you need to fulfill your happiness and be who you want to be? And this is the time that this happens. We go through a massive spiritual and psychological shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can take advantage of it, or you can ignore it and keep going on and, valuing your worth on how much you can do in a day, but you're going to suffer if you do.
Yeah. You're going to burn out. I
You're going
mean,
to burn out.
Simon Sinek, which I love dearly, I think his information is super vital. He was saying how, burnout is a function of not only of how hard you work, etc., but also the support system that you have around you. And that is, although that is 100% true, you are only in a place to receive any of that support system if you are supporting yourself, if the internal dialogue is dialed in and can receive that input. It's almost like we said about receptors of T3 in the body or whatever. If you don't have any receptors, if you didn't prime yourself to receive support and love, and you are focusing inwards to kind of to take care of yourself, none of that matters, and you're just not going to listen to your body at all. You can replace all the hormones you want, but you're going to burn out.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah. And so that's a good place to leave it, because women need to know that this isn't a death sentence. Like, we talked about a lot of negative stuff that happens to women as they lose their hormones. But as they said, you don't have to suffer. Know that first. There's always a solution to this hormonal loss. And there's so much that we can do for ourselves to make this the best time of our lives. You just have to make sure you do them.
Absolutely. So Karen, I think, look, we've spent over an hour. We're always, I always have guests that I want to talk to them for forever.
I know.
But I think that's a great place to leave it, because part of the conversation is that this is a journey. Like, we can talk for a full day. I mean, there are full days of people talking about it, and then people need to live their lives, right? So how can people get more information from you? How can they kind of get support, whether directly from you or stuff you put out there?
Yeah. So we run a clinic in all of North America, pretty much. We can prescribe in every state in the United States, as well as British Columbia, Alberta, and Ontario in Canada. But we can see people from anywhere in the world. We do hormone coaching for anybody, but the prescription we can only do for those specific places. We also we've got something for everybody. We've got a group membership program where we teach women how to get through perimenopause and menopause and thrive. That's really affordable. We do lots of group coaching in there. And then we also have one-on-one packages and one-on-one sessions with our nurse practitioner and hormone coaches. So we have kind of a little something for everybody's price point. We really
Yes.
wanted to make sure that we were able to help the masses
Mm-hmm.
for those that wanted it. I have an excellent podcast. It's a top 100 iTunes podcast, over 1 million downloads, and it's called The Hormone Solution. And it's got over almost 300. By the time this probably airs, we'll probably be at 300 episodes at that point.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
I
so
see.
quite
I
a
see
bit.
you. I see you just had my good friend Ben Azadi on. So uh,
Yes, yeah. I get to see Ben next week
yeah,
in Florida. Yeah, he's
yes,
amazing. I love him.
yes, he is.
But yeah, so he was just on. I'd love to have you guys on at some
Sure,
point to talk
sure.
about skin. Come on. But yeah, and then Karen Martel Hormones on social media.
Fantastic. And we will have everything in the show notes. Again, we reached out because we think you are incredible, and you've just, I think, ex- proven it to everyone else who's listening.
Thank you.
So, Karen, thank you very, very, very much for the time that you spent with us. And again, I hope to have the pleasure to meet you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, guys. Bye, everyone. All right. That was a fantastic interview. I really enjoyed it. Before we conclude today's episode, I would like to take a minute to answer some listener questions. Remember, if you want your question featured in one of the Q&A sections, please leave it in a review on Apple Podcasts, and we might answer it on our next episode, or obviously an episode that is specifically appropriate for it. So the first question is, how can I lighten acne scars quickly? And the answer is, to reduce acne scars, I would consider products with something called sulfurowite, that's a little bit older, vitamin C's, obviously not ascorbic acid, retinoids, or alpha hydroxy acids, AHAs. These ingredients are known to be brightening and brighteners. Um, for a natural approach, you can also use raw honey or aloe vera. Specifically, if you're looking for young Goose products that would help with that, I highly recommend a few. Mainly, I would use the bioretinol at night and ProCare in the morning. This combination is fantastic for either acne in general or acne scars. Next question: how do I resolve breakouts without drying my skin? So, really, you should choose products with minimal alcohol, like no alcohol, or salicylic acid content, because these two dry the skin, and they're in a lot of anti breakout products. Also, try to limit exfoliation to once or twice per week to maintain natural moisture levels. Again, if we're looking at Young Goose products, I would look at something like the green tea phyto serum. If we want to have a good exfoliator that doesn't dry out the skin, I would look at Nia polish. Again, if you were lucky enough to have our, be aware of our products during the month of October. Every October, we also have our detox ritual masks, so you can look at that. But yeah, these two are, again, I mentioned raw honey before. That could also work. And I would also recommend the hyperbaric mask, not necessarily because it has some ingredient that's specifically anti-acne, but it really helps with detoxification. So you could also use that over your moisturizer overnight, and it's not going to obviously dry you out, quite the contrary. And our third question is kind of alongside the same lines, which is, what can I do about hormonal acne? And for hormonal acne, I would really recommend guidance from a medical professional. Again, as you can see from what we spoke about today, hormones hold the key for many, for skin health in general, and that is why I highly recommend, actually reaching out to the guest that we had today. I thought she again, Karen, did an amazing job, and you should definitely reach out to deal with hormones in general and hormonal acne specifically. Again, if you look at Young Goose products that are good for hormonal acne, it's what I mentioned before: bioretinol, Pro Care, Nia Polish, Hyperbaric Mask. Obviously, our Care NAD Boosting Moisturizer is a fantastic addition when we come out with our Youth Reset and Youth Daily, which are two new products we're going to come out with in a couple months, which have also uh, really cool peptide complex and spermidine alongside the NAD precursors. That would be great to use as well. But in general, again, hormonal acne, I would kind of attack it at the source and look at hormonal balance first, and then use good skincare products. Obviously, in general, for all the kind of acne questions, we do have systems on the website that are biohack acne systems. You can look at those systems, and they really are from like minimal, which is things that you can add to your current routine, standard, which are almost a full routine, and advanced, which is literally like the kitchen sink approach. So take a look at that if you're interested. Um, Again, here I'm trying to give you both the recommendation, general recommendation, and Young Goose specific recommendation. So I hope this helps. And obviously, I would love to dive deeper into it if you're interested. Again, you can leave this as a comment on a review. As an example, I often emphasize my, complete, outrage about the skincare industry and the use of ascorbic acid, which is genotoxic, cytotoxic, and shouldn't be. No one in the world should use it. This synthetic type of vitamin C, and I never thought to do a podcast about it. And since a few of you wrote in a comment that I should do a podcast about it, and we got thousands of people writing to us on Instagram and emailing us to do a podcast about it. We had really who I consider the world foremost expert on vitamin C, Lior Sher, on the podcast. This is already out, so this is just an example. But whatever you want us to do a podcast on, this is really for you. So let us know, and we will do it. But that's it for today. I highly appreciate each and every one of you that have joined us today and that stuck around until now. So thank you for joining us today on the Biohacking Beauty podcast. And until next time, take care.